Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture podcast where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture podcast on your favorite podcast platform and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and we are going to talk about the mysterious canine respiratory infection that is going around. And if you haven't heard about it, it's a little scary. And so, with anything, there's no need to be scared. There are reasons, though, to try to put some precautions in place, to try to educate yourself on what's going on to the best of your ability, and just be prepared. So, this mysterious canine respiratory infection doesn't have a name yet. They don't know the name, the cause, and quite frankly, there isn't a treatment that is guaranteed to work. So usually it's a drug for a bug. Normally if you have kennel cough, you take A. If you have bronchitis, you take B. This infection looks a little bit different. So let's kind of get started here. We do know that this infection is now in 14 states. It is in California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. Now, it might be in more states than that because we just had Thanksgiving. A lot of people either traveled with their dogs or they boarded their dogs or took their dogs to doggy daycare. So I do think we are going to see a little bit of a spike in not only the numbers, but the states that are seeing the occurrences of this respiratory infection. Now, some of the symptoms look a lot like kennel cough or bronchitis. And so coughing is the obvious one. Whether it's just a dry, nagging cough or a consistent cough, that seems to be a pretty common factor. Another one that people are seeing are nasal or eye discharge. They're seeing their dogs are a lot more lethargic. They're maybe not playing as much. They're not eating as much. They're not drinking as much. So basically what you would expect with most respiratory illnesses or infections. With that, it's important to think about how is this being transmitted? And it does seem that vets have somewhat narrowed it down to find that it's most likely spread through close contact, so dog to dog interaction, and then very close proximity. I know there's some questions surrounding how long this can live on different surfaces. If one dog goes and he coughs on, let's say, the neighbor's mailbox, and your dog walks through a few hours later, can they get this respiratory infection? And quite honestly, I don't think that that's known yet. And with that, just remember, not a vet. This is not necessarily information to replace that of what your vet has said or might say. And certainly, if your dog is experiencing any of these symptoms, you need to get to your vet immediately. All right. So, something else that I think we've been updated about recently is one of the fears was the fatality rate. And it does seem that there's a connection in the fatality rate and those dogs with comorbidities. So if your dog is already treating for heartworms, treating for cancer, they've got something else underlying or something that's going on. Maybe they're diabetic or they have some kind of other issue. As with almost any disease, infection, illness, that could make them more susceptible, not only to this illness, but the unfortunate prognosis of fatalities. So let's kind of talk about what can you do. So the most obvious thing you can do is avoid dog to dog interaction to the best of your abilities. Avoid dog parks. Avoid boarding your dog if you can. If you can get a friend or a dog sitter to come to your house, that's much better than a boarding facility. Avoiding doggy daycare. Quite frankly, avoiding any outings with your dog where they may come in contact with another dog, or where it is inevitable that you will be walking your dog, making sure that when they come in, you're cleaning off their paws, and just kind of keeping an eye on them, making sure that nothing is changing in their day to day. Some other things that you can do, just making sure your dog stays hydrated. And that might seem obvious, but your dog might start drinking less and you may just not realize it. So keeping them hydrated. I know some people prefer to put a little bit of a low sodium broth in water to get them to drink a little bit more. That's certainly an option. It's a number of options really out there to try to keep them more hydrated. With that, supporting their immune system. So, and that looks so different for everyone, especially depending on your financial circumstances, the time that you can contribute to this. But think about different things to support your dog's immune system. Adding honey. Honey's quite simple. Now, you might want to make sure you're getting a good sourcing of the honey. You don't have artificial sweeteners in there. That's one option. Probiotics. If your dog's not on a probiotic, there's quite a few options out there for probiotics. There's different mushroom blends. There's so many different mushrooms that are fantastic for a dog's immune system. And so researching those, seeing what you can get your hands on with those. Curcumin. Curcumin, as we know, is essentially, I don't want to call it a superfood, but essentially I think of it as a superfood. Great for inflammation and overall immune system. And then a pretty simple one is fish oil. So making sure your dog is getting their omegas in, make sure you're adding their fish oil to their food. We like to use a liquid rather than a capsule, and we just do a little pump of liquid fish oil every night on the dog's food. Other things you can do are incorporating, fresh berries, fresh vegetables into their food. So definitely seeing a lot of people upping the blueberry consumption. Those are full of antioxidants, great for your dogs, can help with their immune system. That's certainly a pretty easy, cost-effective way to just try to boost their immune system. Now, you also probably want to make sure that your dog has been vaccinated for kennel cough, so the Bordetella vaccine. And this is going to differ where you're at, with respect to whether you're getting it annually or twice a year. I know our dogs get it twice a year. Every vet is a little bit different with respect to what they recommend. Definitely ensuring that your dog is indeed vaccinated. Now let's talk treatment. We're seeing different vets putting dogs in these oxygen chambers, utilizing nebulizers. Some doctors are using different medications, a combination of medicines. Do you know there was a successful case in Southern California? They used a medication. It's very difficult to say. Was toying with the idea of even if I was going to try to pronounce it. And I'm going to leave that to you guys. So if you just Google it, I want to say it was on Good Morning America, but it was in Southern California. The medication starts with the C, chloramphenical. And I don't think that's correct. And that's not saying that's good for everyone. However, if you are encountering a vet that maybe hasn't seen this yet, or if you're just kind of in discussions with a vet, or maybe you are a vet, looking into this case where this medication worked, not an end all be all, but certainly something that's kind of in the forefront, kind of breaking news on this mysterious canine respiratory infection. So, would love to hear from some of you guys on what you're doing as a preventative measure, what you're doing to maybe boost your dog's immune system. On the flip side of that, if you do know someone whose dog got this particular infection and if they are having success with their treatment, would also love to hear about that, because the more we can spread the word and educate people, I think the better off that we're going to be on this whole infection, disease, virus, whatever we want to call it. So, hope everyone stays safe out there. Would love to hear from some of you. And as always, thank you guys for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.